Good morning, rise and shine to the morning momentum, your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines, today being the 4th day of March 2025. It's a Tuesday, and T in that Tuesday this morning stands for tough for wheat farmers who are sinking into losses after the imports of 124 billion shillings wheat. Now, we'll take a look at that on the papers this morning. This is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. The hashtag is the morning momentum at Younib Media TV at Alphonce Albakwekwe. Let's take a look at the top stories on the Daily Nation this morning. On the front page, 124 billion shillings wheat imports sink farmers into losses. Some of the millers are owned by tycoons who have been in the industry for decades. Local wheat growers have been hung to dry after the government allowed a group of millers to spend at least 124.5 billion shillings to ship in over 3.2 million tons of the same product farmers harvested in plenty. Farmers may be forced to sell their grain at a loss to avoid losing their entire harvest, with senators now probing how and why the farms were given the nod to import. That story is beefed up for you on page 4 and page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 3, money trail in hand for suspects who killed Briton Campbell in Nairobi. And on page 12 of the Daily Nation this morning, windfall for soldier tortured after coup bid as award raised from 3 million shillings to 20 million shillings. That story is beefed up for you on page 12. On page 2, Ugandan minister and US tycoon and Kenyan ties to 81 million shillings fake gold scam. In October 2022, New York-based accountant Brian Hill was approached by lawyer Randolph Adler with a proposal to invest in a lucrative gold trading scheme that would see him partner with an individual touted as one of the biggest dealers in the world. 5 months later, Mr. Hill has lost $632,885, amounting to 81.8 million shillings, and is running around in circles trying to recover his money and hoping that authorities will help him get justice. That story is on page 2 for you this morning. And on page 7, Gachagwa's plot to end UDA grip on Mount Kenya. The former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has rolled out a political scheme designed to create a siege mentality in the populous Mount Kenya region, even as he targets President William Ruto's allies for an onslaught, quote-unquote, nation has established that Mr. Gachagwa's camp is already working on a plan to instigate multiple by-elections by seeking to have some President Ruto's allies recalled by voters once IEBC is reconstituted. That story is briefed up for you on page 7. Let's get up close and candid on page 2 with The Nation. Ugandan minister distressed as tycoon and Kenyan ties to 81 million shillings fake gold scam. Now, Ugandan minister admitted entering into a deal but denied being part of those who defrauded the American. American is trying to recover his money and hoping that the authorities, including the DCI, will help him get justice. That story is briefed up for you on page 2 of The Nation this morning. Let's take a quick look at page 3. Money trail in hand for suspects who stole from murdered Briton. Preliminary investigations reveal that Scott Campbell was taken to a house belonging to Alex Mutua in Pipeline. The courts has allowed the prosecution's request to have 2 suspects detained in police custody for 3 weeks. That story is beefed up for you on page 3. Still on page 3 this morning, YKU Council sent Peninah packing. Now, Kenyatta University Vice Chancellor Paul Peninah has 30 months accrued leave days since 2010 that must be utilized before his retirement. The University Council has said in papers filed in court in a legal dispute with the VC. Defending its decision to kick out Professor Peninah and hire his replacement, the council said he would be attaining the mandatory retirement age of 75 years in July this year. Though through Chair Ben Chumo, it said Professor Peninah was supposed to be away from office for a long time as he had not utilized his sabbatical leave days from January 2010 to 2025. Let's take a look at page 4. 124 billion shillings wheat import scandal sparks outrage. Now, local farmers stuck with grain harvested last year, and a group of 35 millers have been given the green light to import wheat. They include old players and new dealers in the business. Local wheat growers have been hung out to dry after the government allowed millers who are behind most well-known flour brands to spend at least 124.5 billion shillings to import over 3.2 million tons of the grain, despite farmers having a good harvest. Following the green light given to the millers to import wheat, local farmers may be forced to sell their grain at a loss to avoid losing their entire harvest. You want to catch up with that on page 4 and page 5 this morning. Now, the companies that are behind the importation of wheat, comprising of tycoons who have been in the sector for decades and some newcomers. So here is the list. Kitui Flour Mills, tons to be imported stands at 324,000. Joy Millers Limited are supposed to import 200,000 tons. Capewell Industries Limited will be importing 65,000 tons. Karibu Flour Mills will be importing 60,000 tons. Bekex Millers Limited will be importing 50,000 tons. Alpha Grain Millers will be importing 45,000 tons. Rafiki Millers Limited will be importing 40,000 tons. Lukenya Flour Mills will be importing 33,000 tons. Malindi Flour Millers will be importing 27,500 tons. Jamii Milling Limited will be importing 24,000 tons. Eldoret Grains Limited, known for the flagship brand of Dollar, will be importing 5,000 tons. And Weetabix East Africa Limited will be importing another 5,000 tons, bringing that to a total of about 3.2 million tons of the grain. That story is beefed up for you on page 5. We move on and take a look at page 6 on the political landscape. Stop abusing freedom of speech, former DP warned. The commission faults former deputy president for warning Dr. Ruto not to visit Meru County if CJ is removed from office. He has been advised not to engage in utterances that amount to propaganda for war. Now, here's the thing. The National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, has ordered former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua to desist from making statements that may stir ethnic hatred and incite violence in his political tackles with President William Ruto. Citing Mr. Gashagua's recent remarks on petitions seeking the removal of Chief Justice Martha Koome, the commission ruled the former DP out of order, saying he was abusing freedom of speech. And that story is beefed up for you on page 6. On page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning, inside Gashagua's plot to drive UDA out of the Mount Kenya region. Plan underway to force a little general election once the Electoral Commission is reconstituted. Former Deputy President and his team are collecting signatures to recall 5 lawmakers who are still supporting the president. Here's the strategy for you. The making of a political kingpin of the mountain. Now, Mr. Gachagua says about 139 MCAs have already indicated their willingness to resign from the UDA alliance to seek a fresh mandate. Embakasi Central MP Benjamin Gadhiru aka Major Donk disclosed that they plan to recall 4 MPs and a senator allied to Dr. Ruto to prompt by-elections. Senators Joe Newto says the plan is to have a few lawmakers allied to Mr. Gachagua to resign once the IEBC is reconstituted, and they have a new party on whose tickets the politicians will seek re-election. That story is briefed up for you on page 7. Let's take a look at page 8. Man wants Kenya Power barred from disconnecting electricity to essential facilities. Now, a Mombasa resident has taken Kenya Power to court seeking to prevent the electricity provider from disconnecting power supply to critical public facilities such as hospitals over unpaid bills. Mr. Charles Waithaka Rubia argues that such actions previously disrupted essential services and put lives at risk. You'll catch up with that on page 8. Let's stay a little bit on page 8 and tackle matters corruption. Waititu to stay longer in jail as bond request declined. Now, the former governor wanted to be free pending appeal hearing. Court dismisses his application, saying he did not provide reasonable legal issues. Now, the grounds, you have all those snippets here. Let me give you a synopsis of that. The grounds are not sufficient. Justice Nguna said the medical grounds advanced by Mr. Waititu were not sufficient for the court to grant him bail. Another thing is that through the fundamental rights, the lawyer Dunstan Omari further argued that denying him bail would violate his fundamental right to liberty, which could not be suspended arbitrarily. Now, also on contradictions, Mr. Waititu's defense team asserts that the court failed to appreciate contradictions in the evidence presented, which created reasonable doubt about his involvement in the alleged crimes. That story is beefed up for you on page 8. Now let's move on and take a look at page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. How JM's killing shaped Kenyatta administration and succession. For many years, every anniversary of Kariuki's assassination triggered student-led demonstrations. On that day, jets from the Kenya Air Force roared over Nairobi as Jomo Kenyatta in military uniform stood resolutely upon a dais. On Sunday, March 23, 1975, a fortnight after the brutal assassination of JM Kariuki, President Kenyatta's inner circle orchestrated a grand military spectacle through the heart of Nairobi. By displaying state of power, Jomo Kenyatta was sending a signal to dissenters that the government would crush any flicker of dissent. As the tanks glowed and rolled down the avenues, the soldiers clad in full regalia marched with a steely precision as a reminder of the regime's underlying grip. The silencing of JM Kariuki had ignited a nationwide outrage, unleashing a wave of defiance the government had not anticipated. Now, you want to catch up with that story of history on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's move on and take a look at page 12. Windfall for former soldier as award raised to 20 million shillings. Petitioner arrested over failed 1982 coup was held in Comunicado. Appellate judges fined 3 million shillings given to Matu for wrongful dismissal too low. That story is beefed up for you on page 12. Let's take a look at page 13. Kenya to rescue 64 stranded in Myanmar. The two nations engage to reopen border. The Kenyans are unable to cross into Thailand since February 12th. Nairobi is currently in talks with Thailand authorities to reopen the Thai-Myanmar border, aiming to facilitate the evacuation of 64 Kenyans rescued from human trafficking networks in Myanmar. According to the Ministry of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, the group was still stranded at the border by yesterday. The Kenyans are part of a larger group of over 7,000 foreigners freed by armed groups but unable to cross into Thailand since February 12th, when the first group of 250 victims, including 23 Kenyans, was allowed entry. You'll catch up with that story on page 13. Let's move on to some other stories here that takes us to expert opinion. Let's rethink delivery of affordable housing units. The world over, governments are facilitators, not developers. You will catch up with that on page 16. Also, probation volunteers key to criminal justice. Kenya's probation system, like many across the globe, faces numerous challenges. You want to catch up with that opinion on page 16. On page 17 this morning, it's about Ruto quote-unquote generosity rolls back Gen Z gains. Kenyans are well known for their generosity in giving not just to churches, but more worthy causes. That expert opinion as well is beefed up for you on page 17. Now, let's move on and take a look at county news now. Founder of Fake Degrees College is quote-unquote a Form 4 leaver. Students were being taught online after paying 100,000 shillings or 50,000 shillings. Bishop Moses Masiga runs 65 branches of his church in Kenya. Now, for close to 5 years, Northwestern Christian University College has been issuing diplomas and degree qualifications to individuals seeking to study religion at the Gate of Holiness Worship Center Church and College in Bombolulu, Mombasa. The college was thrust into the limelight on Friday when the Commission for University Education and police disrupted a graduation ceremony at Wild Waters Park and arrested graduates, honors of the church and university officials. The church and the alleged online university, which education officials say is not recognized in Kenya, run crash online programs that have seen many members of the Gate Holiness Worship Center acquire academic certificates within a year of studies. That story is beefed up for you on page 21. Now let's move briefly to Turkana County. Body found in Lake Turkana, and that body was recovered on Sunday after Kenya Red Cross stepped up the research and rescue operation for victims of the February 2022 deadly attack by suspected Dasenek militia from Ethiopia on Turkana fishermen and pastoralists in Lopoemukat village. In Nairobi County, Mukuru Kayaba drainage cleared after a nation expose last week on clogged drainage along the perimeter wall of Kayaba Primary School. Area administrators responded swiftly and took action. Yesterday, the climate works team was busy unclogging the trench, about which health workers had raised concern. In Machakos County this morning, traders asked to be aware of crashes. It is a hive of activity at Mututini shopping center on Sunday, and it's a market day. A high number of people flocked to the market along the busy Machakos highway. The government has directed traders to move away from the road to avert accidents. That story is beefed up for you on page 21. In Trans Nzoia County, allow us to mourn Chebukati in peace, family says. Family members of former chairman of IEBC Wafula Chebukati have pleaded with Kenyans to allow them give him a befitting send-off. The family has regretted what it termed character assassination of their kin by a section of Kenyans, especially on social media, after his death on February 21st, saying he was an innocent man with a great personality and high integrity. You'll catch up with that story on page 21. Let's move on and take a look at page 22. In Samburu County, I saw death with my own eyes, burst out, recounts Samburu horror. Survivor Yusuf recalls how gunmen sprayed bullets at their bus which was heading to Maralal, which left 2 casualties. At 9 a.m. on February 27th, a Maralal-bound bus by Christenman City departed from Baragoi town and headed to Maralal on the treacherous Baragoi-Maralal road. On board were approximately 60 passengers, including women and children. Among them was Abdi Yusuf, the bus conductor who made this journey countless times before. The Maralal-Baragoi road was unusually quiet that morning as passengers, who were mostly traders and a few students on midterm break, hoped for a smooth journey. That story is beefed up for you on page 22. Let's take a look at Nairobi again. More trouble for Wangilla as her assets targeted. A state agency wants 3 high-end motor vehicles, an apartment in Juja, and more than 9 parcels of land linked to drug suspect Nancy Indoveria Kigunzu, popularly known as Wangilla, forfeited to the government. In an application pending before the High Court, Assets Recovery Agency said it believed the listed properties are proceeds of crime and should be forfeited to the state. That story is beefed up for you on page 22. Let's take a look at page 23. Exposed. Fake lawyers syndicate swindling gullible land buyers. LSK to act against lawyers who let clerks and qualified people to operate their satellite offices. DCI detectives say it appears to be a well-organized criminal web operating in Nyahururu, and 2 suspects have been arrested. That story is beefed up for you on page 23. In matters health, SHIF is the best medical scheme, says Homa Bay Governor Gladys Wanga. The Orange Democratic Movement has thrown its weight behind Ruto's Social Health Insurance Fund, describing it as a revolutionary step towards universal health coverage. However, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga's party is urging the government to fix technological and operational challenges that have plagued its rollout. You'll catch up with that on page 23. Now, also on page 23 this morning, how KMTC student died while trying to save drowning teammate. That human interest story is beefed up for you on page 23. Let's shift gears and take a look at the international news. Congo Army desertion trials spotlight a force in tatters. They stand trial for crimes including rape and murder committed as they fled M23 advance. Their statements paint a grim picture of a fighting force hobbled by poor pay and corruption. That story is beefed up for you on page 24. Now, also on the international scene this morning, UK and European leaders to draft Ukraine peace plan to take to US. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said on Sunday European leaders had agreed to draw up a Ukraine peace plan to present to the United States, a vital step for Washington to be able to offer security guarantees that Kyiv says are essential to deter Russia. That story is on page 24. And lastly, as we clock out on the international scene, we take a look at Gaza briefly. Israel widely condemned for blocking aid to Gaza. Israel's decision to block humanitarian aid to Gaza since early Sunday has sparked fierce condemnation from Palestinian factions, regional countries, and international organizations. At the start of a cabinet meeting on Sunday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the decision, quote unquote, to prevent any entry of goods and supplies into Gaza was made to pressure Hamas into accepting a new proposal to extend the first phase of the ceasefire and hostage release deal, which he said was put forth by U.S. Mid-East envoy Steve Witkoff. Now, with that story of Israel and Gaza, we clock out on the international scene. We come back to Kenya and take a look at business news. Defaults on Hustler Uwezo Youth Funds hit 28.4 billion shillings. Bad loans pose a risk to agencies meant to support the vulnerable. Audit for the year to June 2024 shows that Commodities Fund is worst hit. The figure stands at 12.8 billion shillings that the Treasury had injected into the Hustler Fund by June 2024. Briefly, in the internet sector, new social media sign-ups in Kenya declined to 16%. The number of active social media users in Kenya grew at a slower pace of 15.9% in 2024 compared to a 38.2% jump recorded during the previous year, new data shows. In the industrial sector this morning, relief for sugar miller as Kwale Land Row solved. Now, the coastal-based Kwale International Sugar Company Limited has found relief after the government intervened to resolve a long-standing land dispute. That story is beefed up for you on page 25. Let's take a look at sports news this morning. We start with rugby. History making Kenya Lioness dream big. Now, Coach Mwanja's Chargers clinch first major global title. The team hopes to replicate their form in the second leg of Challenger Series this weekend. In matters golfing this morning, lady golfer Mutahi wins Coast Tony. 10 lessons from one of Kenya's leading amateur golfers, Sami Mulama, proved invaluable for the lady golfer Jacqueline Mutahi as she clinched the overall prize at the chairman's Paul Munyao Prize at Mombasa Golf Club over the weekend. Women doing great in sports out there. Now, let's take a look at page 34. Nelvin Jepkemboi, from cooking to elite running. The 10 best athletes' first international event in 2023 was memorable as she won the Paris 10 kilometers road race. The 23-year-old honed her skills alongside US-based marathoner Betsy Saina. On page 35 this morning, Mark Cathy, We will surprise many by what we achieve. South African legend has signed a 2-year deal that will take him up to 2027 AFCON. His first assignment will be a must-win 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifier away to the Gambia on March 17th. That story is beefed up for you on page 35. On the FKF Premier League, Kenya Police battle Leopards holders Gor Mahia ready for Kariobangi Sharks. Kenya Police will aim to widen their lead at the top of the Football Kenya Federation Premier League table when they host AFC Leopards in a rescheduled midweek fixture at Kenyatta Stadium in Machakos today. Let's take a look at the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning. Governors burn millions on rented homes against the law. Ignored directive aimed at curbing unnecessary expenditure. The counties had until June 30th, 2022 to stop paying rent for governors and their deputies. You want to catch up with that on the cover page. Let's take a look at that. List of counties and amount allocated the construction of governor and deputy residents. Now, in Kwale County, Fatuma Achani, who is the governor, was allocated 149 million shillings. And Tana River Dado Godana was allocated 39.8 million shillings. Lamu, 44 million shillings. Embu County, 49.7 million shillings. Baringo County, 15 million shillings. Now, lastly, as we conclude on the cover page, MPs take on Sakaja over Stima Plaza garbage dump. MPs have questioned Nairobi County Governor Johnson Sakaja's claim that he took less than 30 minutes to have the garbage dumped outside Stima Plaza by City Council employees cleared in row with Kenya Power. Now, with that story of Sakaja, we come to today's end of the Morning Momentum. Thank you so much for choosing to keep us company and for watching the best youth television network in East and Central Africa. This morning, our gratitude also goes to all those who made this broadcast a success. Behind the lens, Raphael, Wangilla, and the chief controller this morning has been Peninah, Wachera. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Tuesday ahead of you.